What's up guys, Cloudie here checking in from the America server, and in this video we are gonna be looking at TechnoMagic gear again, and namely skill lines for support characters. Now in the previous two videos we have looked at the skill lines for DPS characters who will be mostly using the Galgoria set, and we have looked at which sets to use for each support character. Some will like the Siegfried one, some will like the Escalon one, but we haven't looked at the skill lines themselves yet. So we're gonna do that right now. Going from the shop of Valence, we are gonna check in the inventory where I have saved most of the gear that I think have gear lines that you would, or skill lines that you would like to have on your DPS, or no, sorry, on your support. Okay, because I'm looking at DPS items. But alright, let's see. The first one would be this line, in my opinion: attack of all allies by 5%. You can have 4 of these per character, of course, which means 20% attack per character. And this is active all the time. It has no preconditions, no uptime or anything. It's just always there, which is pretty strong. I mean, if you have 7 support characters in a raid, that's 140% attack. That's massive. That's a lot of stat lines, and attack is just really scaling so well in the game, both for DPS and supports like healers or shields, plus some others who like transfer part of their attack to like your highest DPS. So basically attack, having more of it is always good. I would say if you get a good support set with this line, it's definitely worth keeping. Now, similar to this, but somewhat less strong, is crit damage of all allies by 10%. Now, before TechnoMagic gear, all our support characters were running Dark Legion gear for 13% crit damage per set, so a whole set was giving 13%. Now, a single line of this gives 10, so that's almost the same, and if you want, you can have 4 of these per character as well. It's slightly less strong than attack, and it doesn't help all of your characters as attack does, so somewhat less significant. But in the new TechnoMagic raids, for instance, we don't really bring Levril because we can't have 2 priests in the group, and we still need to survive. So yeah, it can be a valid option to like boost the crit damage of all your DPS, especially if you are not just running a single DPS like in some of the Siegfried or Escalon raids, where it can benefit well, it can benefit most of your DPS. Okay, so yeah, crit damage is also good. Now going on, I really do like this stat line, but it, as you can see, it has a serious limitation. Increases the damage of the ally with the highest attack by 2.5% for 200 seconds. Now if you have 4 lines of this per character, that's 10%. That's a lot actually. 10% is a big increase, but of course the 200-second limitation means you can't use it everywhere. You can use it in like Trials or Shockmeme or Eclipse or like Xanadu, but you can't use it on the longer world bosses, and you can't use it in like most of the guild conquest battles unless you kill it in like 3 minutes, a bit more than 3 minutes. So this comes with a serious limitation, and the limitation puts it a bit lower because it also means that you know, the way I see it is that after a while you will be running into serious blocks with reforging the gear. So it's not just getting the drops that you want, getting the skill lines that you want, but then reforging them to have the correct stat lines that you need. And TechnoMagic gear only has 2 stat lines, so you definitely need the perfect ones. And there is like 3 various stages of those 2 lines. So it's a lot of reforging, guys. I don't know how it's going for you, but personally I have used a lot of reforged tickets, and it's been really hard to get correct stats. So because of this, you have to consider the cost of getting that item and how useful it will be to you. I would say attack is always useful, so it should take the priority. This would probably give you more DPS, but only in limited cases, so you have to kind of take that into consideration. But okay, let's move on. After these 3, the 3 basic items, let's see what else we can have for DPS increasing lines. Now, this one is pretty interesting because ever since char got nerfed, we don't really have cooldown reduction in the game other than like a few options like Priest S2, for instance. But for the most part, this is not something we can have. And now this one gives 3% cooldown reduction when your mana hits 100%, every 10 seconds basically. So if you can equip a character with a lot of mana regen, like say Fallen Frey or Shea, with this one, you can have 4 lines on this character, so that's 12% cooldown reduction every 10 seconds. That's not too bad actually, and this is for the entire group. So again, can be pretty powerful. It can make a lot of characters into a lot more useful. It can mean higher uptime on certain buffs or skills, like shields for instance, and it can help characters with really long cooldowns, say Panseron or Crow, to cast their skills even more often. So this can be pretty powerful. Yeah, you could put 4 of them on one character and you see a lot more use of all your character's skills. I would say this is something you can consider in a lot of fights. Now there is a more selfish version of this same stat or the cooldown reduction stat, and that's this line, which is, it can be for skill 1 or skill 2 or skill 3. Every 10 seconds you get a 10% reduction per skill line. And this is also pretty interesting because there are some characters with very strong buffs. For instance, you can consider Labril S2, Mediana S3, which can make your DPS immortal, like they cannot die while they have the buff. And in some stages, like in Eclipse, it was a thing where you would rotate the Mediana and the Lavril to keep a frontline DPS alive. Well, now if you have enough cooldown reduction, this could be possible to do just with one character and just keep rolling, say, Mediana's S3 with enough reduction that it never expires before you recast it. So that's something pretty powerful, but it also could help with keeping up your shields, because other than Fallen Frey, the all other shield casting heroes cannot have 100% uptime. So there is Lomond, there is Normal Frey or Evan who have shields, but they cannot keep it up forever. Well, with this new skill set, you could technically have them shielded all the time, and that's also pretty powerful, especially in places where healing is not so easy. Let's say Eclipse, where after a while you are just not really healing at all, but if you can keep casting shields, that's really powerful. And generally shields are really powerful anyway. So this is also an interesting line, more character specific but still very useful. And speaking of shields, we can go to this one. This one increases your own shield by 25%. Now the wording is a bit weird because the shield that you cast is affected and it affects everyone. So for instance, Fallen Frey gets a bonus from this for everyone that she shields, and that's powerful. There was a post on Reddit by Exdigo. Sorry, I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. And it showed that how the shield actually changes in strength with these lines. It gets very powerful. So it can be also a very good option if you want beefier shields to survive strong attacks. So yeah, this is also a fairly viable option that you can consider. For instance, this is how I'm building my Frey now, with probably one more option of these on her S2, so she has no or little to no downtime. Because even with a 5-star unit treasure, especially if she casts her S3, you can have a small downtime and her cast is a bit slow. So technically it's not 100% uptime, but it's like very close to it. So yeah, I will probably get one cooldown reduction for her S2 at some point. Now moving on, there is one more that's like affecting your DPS, but in a more indirect way, and the soul weapon usage limit. I have also mentioned this at the DPS lines, but it's also useful for support characters because the number of charges you get on your soul weapons is like really varying per character. Some get like 4, others get 7, and you can run out of them. I know like one of the friends I had who was like doing top damage, like top 5 North American damage on World Boss 1, and they said that they were like menace-starving their Esker so he doesn't run out of soul weapon charges too soon. So with one of these lines you could technically keep Esker just casting normally and you would be fine probably. So it can be useful for some characters who use up their charges too fast. I would say it's like a fairly reasonable line to have, but again very character specific, so you have to consider if it's worth the recharges and the effort. And then these are basically all the stat lines that will affect your DPS. The rest is survival. Now in most cases survival is less hard when you have high unique treasures when you have fallen prey, but there are certain fights that do hit hard, be that like trials or eclipse in some points, so or whichever boss. It can be that you feel like you need some extra protection, and there are skill lines that can be used for that. So let's see which ones these are and whether they are worth or not. So starting off, let's check this one. This is takes reduced damage, either magic or physical, and this goes up to 30% per skill line. So this can be pretty powerful if your tank is struggling with a certain content. Like say for instance Trial of Flow, you have a magic tank, this line could be pretty useful there just to keep them more easily alive, because sometimes it takes chunks out of you even with a lot of magic defense. So not the best stat line to have. This also has a different version, which I believe was not this one, maybe it was this one, where every skill used it takes 3% reduced damage. So this stacks up 8 times, that's 24%, which can be used as a generic tank. For instance, if you are running Eclipse, where bosses and monsters can be both physical or magical, and then you could run one of these lines to just take generally less damage. It could be useful for your tank. So maybe having one of these on your tank is not so bad. I kept one of these around just to show. So yeah, that's one option. Moving on, there is also dodge. You can get 200 dodge on one line, and it also gives you some healing, which is pretty powerful. Remember, tanks like to dodge. It makes them not take damage, so it's really useful outside of shock maim and trials where you cannot utilize dodge. But in a lot of cases you still can, so this is very useful. And from what I heard, this is also getting very popular in PvP, where people will run like Chase with 3 or 4 of these lines, and he's just like untouchable while murdering you, being immune to everything. So kind of disgusting, but yeah, it's an option that you can use. Yeah, kind of useful to have. Remember, tanks do like to dodge, and this is all types of dodge. So yeah, you can stack up a lot of that easily. Now, of course, the other thing that tanks do like is block chance. So there is a basic one which gives all block 250. If you somehow need more block and couldn't get it from your stat lines, this could be alright-ish. It's not too much, but yeah. The thing is with TechnoMagic gear, you are limited on the stat lines, so 250 block could be useful. Again, the way I see it, this would be mostly if you wanted like an Eclipse tank where you do not know what kind of damage, or where you do know that you need both, but you need both. So like, you know, this kind of all block chance lines are okay. But then there is this version where it says that it increases all block every time you block. It increases your all block by 20, and this stacks up 20 times, so you can get like 400 out of it. And yeah, for that you need to actually block to get a charge, but over time this will give you a lot more than the other option. So 400 versus 250, that's quite a nice gain. Now there is also another version where you get like 200 base and then extra 150, or the other way around, but the extra is only like 10 seconds worth. So I don't know, 10 seconds fights are really rare. It's like PvP and maybe some Eclipse stages, so I don't think that one is really worth the resources to reforge and stuff, so maybe I wouldn't go with that one. And then of course for not dying, we have defense. We have the base all defense 25% option, which is not too bad. I mean, again, Eclipse or some other parts, some characters like have buffs they give based on their defense, like Priscilla or Loman or Glamvis, for instance. They all have like defense based buffs, or some of the other tanks too. So yeah, it can be useful for them. I would say mostly in Eclipse, but again, the problem is cost of reforging. And then there is a different version which is increases defense by 45% when there is one enemy, and there is a when there are 3 enemies version. Well, the one enemy could be used because there are a lot of single boss fights there. Trials, most of them, or I don't know, shock meme, the big shock meme, for instance, but he ignores defense, so you wouldn't use it there. But like some of the conquest bosses, some of the world bosses. So yeah, this can be used in more situations, provided you need the extra defense. It can be good. Some characters can benefit from this, a lot of defense. Transfer all that defense to your like highest attacker, like a Celica does. So it's not too bad. It's just yeah, it's very specific to certain situations, certain characters, and that's why it's not really high on the list. And then finally, the 3 enemies version. Well, that's even more specific. There are very few situations where you are facing exactly 3 enemies. There's like Xanadu and Guild War, and from the top of my head, that's really it. I don't remember any other place where you are always facing 3 enemies. There are 1 and 2, and there are like 5, but 3 is a pretty rare number. I do not know why they added that to the pool. It feels like it's kinda too limited, so I wouldn't really bother with that one. And yeah, these are all the skill lines I believe that we wanted to have a look at. I would go for the most cases with one of the initial ones, attack, always useful, and in some cases the cooldown reductions can be really nice. And then if you feel like your tank is dying or you are having issues with survival, then you can consider the more defensive stat lines like block, defense, dodge. There is an HP version which may be good for like Sonya, who skills with her HP, but I didn't really want to go into that one because that's like just way too specific. So yeah, this has been it, guys. I hope it helps you figure out which lines to run on your support characters. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments below. And this has been Cloudie for now. See you in the next one. Bye bye.